Good afternoon, church. God is good, and for the time, it is my pleasure to stand before this church to make a tribute to Mr. Paul Gicheru, who was very many things to me. He was my classmate, as John Boro has said. He was a professional colleague that I worked closely with, and he was also a family friend and very close to my law firm. My wife, Judy, is here, and I believe Kinoti Bombwa, my partner, is somewhere there, and this was a testimony, and Ruth is also here, and the children, that we indeed did work closely with Paul, and we became good friends. Now, Paul, the lawyer and the citizen of Kenya, I stand here to make the testimony that he was much more than probably the Paul that we read in newspapers. Paul was an all-rounded lawyer in very many ways. He was an accomplished legal practitioner, a very good court lawyer. Paul was also an adjudicator in the sense that he was an arbitrator, and as our colleague Njeri has said, Paul was the chairman of the Public Procurement Administrative Review Board at a time when it was extremely busy. Under the procurement law, that is an extremely busy job, under which decision must be made within very tight timelines, which attest to the fact that he was an extremely hardworking person. Paul also, towards the end, and that is when he worked at EPZA, he was a policymaker and a corporate lawyer, and indeed worked very much. You could have said that he was an economist in the way that he carried himself. But I speak, as I said, as a personal friend and also a family friend. I came to know Paul in 1992 when, as 20-year-olds, we joined the University of Nairobi. In the university, this was the time after the boom. There was nothing remarkable except that 1992, when we joined the university, was the first time that our age mates voted for the first time. And as it was to be, there were about 4 parties: KANU, Ford Kenya, Ford Asili, and Democratic Party DP. Paul and I and a few of us were supporters of Ford Asili, and therefore we started getting into these many discussions about politics, and we became closer later on when we discovered of our common roots in the Rift Valley. I come from Nakuru. Paul was from somewhere around Eldoret, and my own father was born in somewhere called Kaptagat. I believe it could be somewhere, either was in Gicheru or Elgeyo Marakwet. And later on, Paul would come to Nakuru. So this history that we shared as people from the Rift Valley brought us closer. And it was particularly during the time when we were playing football, 1994, 1995. And I was therefore very happy to hear one of his sons is actually a footballer and has a keen interest. Paul was also very good in football. Now, we graduated, all of us, in 1996, and we went to Eldoret. We stayed in Nairobi. In Eldoret, I had the privilege to appear on different sides with him. He was working for a bank. He was working at Kalia and Advocates. I was at Kamaukuri at that time, and I was working for somebody called Dr. Ruben Nasibi. While working there and working for different sides, we could throw everything, every other challenge at each other before the judge. But when we came out and this client of mine would see us laughing at each other, he would get amazed how it is that lawyers in court would quarrel, throw everything at each other, but outside you would be extremely good friends. And that is the tradition of the lawyers that I am happy we were able to uphold, to defend our clients as much as we could, and also to be the best of friends, given our common history. When Paul was still in Eldoret, it is important that I mention that there is one extremely important case that he argued before the Court of Appeal. This is the case of Mary Rono versus Jane Rono. The decision that he argued against the Court of Appeal was where a judge in a succession dispute had made a decision where girls were given less share of inheritance compared to the boys. Paul argued that under the Constitution of Kenya, there can be no distinction that can be made between a boy girl and a girl child. And therefore, all children must be treated in an equal manner, whether or not, as the judge had argued in the High Court, the girls were going to marry later. Now that decision is very important because even before the new constitution came into place, Paul had argued an important case that established an important principle of equality before the law. I think Jerry spoke much of the fact that as chairman of the review board, Paul made very many good decisions. I got interest in those decisions for the simple reason that many times he would tell me, and very joyous, that Justice Odunga had upheld this or the other decision of his. And therefore, he was a remarkable, good lawyer. We would go on, and when he was coming back to Nairobi in 2013, I recall that some time back he called me and said, Kibe, there is somebody here that I would wish you to represent. It turned out to be somebody called Baraza. I asked him, why do you want me to represent Baraza? Then he said, you see, Kibe, you had done some work during the case of eligibility case against the former president and now the current president some time back in 2013. I believe Katwa was the lawyer for the current president, and I was the lawyer for the national, it was called what, TNA. And the other lawyer, incidentally, the world works in a funny way, was Evans Monari. Today, when I was seeing the photograph of Paul, the death announcement, I saw it's the first anniversary since the death of Monari last year. And therefore, for some reason, our history and having Katwa standing beside me, it makes you wonder how history works around itself. So, but be that as it may, we agreed we do the case. Later on in the course of doing the case, I would take a bullet for Paul. And that is the case when a warrant of arrest was issued against him by the ICC. It turned out that on a specific date, the Baraza case was before the Court of Appeal, and his case was being heard before Justice Kimaru. It was extremely important for Paul that this case should be heard to completion. So I had to make a choice in which I had to choose to go to the High Court and not to the Court of Appeal. The judges of the Court of Appeal would not understand, but I had to take a bullet for a friend. And therefore, I am happy standing here to say that we have gone the full circle with Paul Gicheru. His children should be proud to have had a great man as their father. I believe they are in good hands with Ruth and with the church and the support of all of us. I believe they will all turn out very well. May God bless them. May Gicheru find peace in heaven. He was a patriotic person, and may his death bring healing to our country. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Mr. Kalia, please.